Welcome to the Be Well at Usask podcast. My name is Peter Headley. I serve as Director of Student Affairs and Services at the university. This podcast is for all members of the University of Saskatchewan community. Each week, members of the Usask community will join me to share ideas and provide guidance on all aspects of being well. And we'll be highlighting campus initiatives and resources designed to engage and support you. In these challenging times, we hope the ideas and information we share will help. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Renée Penney, Director of Student Advising and Academic Services, and Blair Pisio, Manager of Undergraduate Services from the College of Arts and Science Undergraduate Student Office. We're going to be talking about academic supports for students at the College of Arts and Science. Okay, well, welcome to the podcast, guys. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, you Peter. For having us.
So, can you start off by telling me a little bit about your roles and the work your team typically does to support students at the College of Arts and Science?
Absolutely. In my particular role, my role is to guide the direction of the Undergraduate Student Office, and in particular, the work of the academic advisors. So academic advisors are coaches, they're advocates, they're sometimes mentors for students, and we help them navigate their academic progress. So my goal would be to optimize academic supports for students and maintain relationships across the university with groups like yourself.
And how about yourself, Blair?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the Manager of Undergraduate Services for the undergrad office, and I've been on campus for about 10 years in a variety of student service roles. The first in recruitment, which really helped me kind of expand my knowledge on campus. My primary role is to provide oversight to the undergraduate services team in the college, and they are the team that provides frontline and administrative service to all of the students in the college. And in a bit, we'll talk about what that looks like prior to and now during the pandemic. But really, these folks a student in the college is going to come across them at some point in their academic journey. And then my other responsibilities are more related to the technical services side of our operations, so providing oversight to convocation and degree works and all the forms of services that we have for undergraduate students in the college.
That's great. Thanks. So, you mentioned the current situation, and I know for everyone on campus that looks very, very different. So in terms of the students, how do students access the undergraduate student office now that campus is closed?
Good question, Peter. I think now and more than ever, we're trying to be we've always tried to be a one-stop shop for our students, but we're really focusing on that right now and making sure that because of the added level of stress that students are in, if they have a question that's maybe out of our purview or not really within the academic jurisdiction of a college, we make sure to try and help them figure out where they need to go. One of the big challenges with all of the units on campus was figuring out how to do pretty much what we always do remotely. And I think for service units, like ours, it's even more challenging because not only are we trying to continue our administrative function, but we had to figure out creative ways to still maintain that service piece for students. And because we no longer had access to our physical space of Arts 265, we still wanted to be able to duplicate that in a way for our students. So the primary way that, and really probably the quickest way right now for students to get a hold of us is via our telephone number. And I'll just throw it out here quick. It's 306-966-4231. And just within the last week or so, we've added a toll-free line of 1-844-966-4231. So that's the quickest way for students to get a hold of us. It's always staffed between 9 and noon, 1 and 4, Monday through Friday. The staff that answer that phone are part of the undergraduate service team, and they can help students book an appointment, answer questions about convocation, registration. Lately, too, the staff have spent a lot of time just helping comfort students and talk to them about the stress that they're feeling. Our email address still remains active, and it's probably email, I think, and Renée will touch on this too, but it's become one of the more primary ways that all of us have started to communicate with each other, and that's student-advice@artsandscience.usask.ca. So that's staffed Monday through Friday as well throughout the day. We just, in light of the current circumstances, students are expecting probably about a 48-hour turnaround for our responses. We're still maintaining appointments, so the staff, when students call, are connecting them with their academic advisor. And advising by telephone is not something that's new to our office. We've always done it, but now the staff are just that very first point of contact for the students. We're still processing all of our student requests that students might need at this time of year. So things like confirmation letters, any permissions related to registration, and most of the other queries. There are some things that we had to temporarily suspend that we continue to update our website on. But I think right now the big focus for us and the really most important thing for students in the college is whether or not they can graduate. And we know that the university has been good at communicating that even though convocation itself won't happen, students will still receive their parchments. So that's the primary focus of our services team right now. And within about a week or so, it'll be the focus of the advisors as well. And then also we're supporting students as they plan for registration for fall and spring and summer session, which I know we're going to talk about later. So I think the big message for students is to know that we're still here. We don't get to see them every day, but we're here by telephone and email to help them in whatever way that we can.
That's great, thanks. And we'll put all those details you mentioned, all this contact information in the podcast details. So, Renée, maybe you can talk a little bit about what some of the advisors can actually do to assist students at the moment.
Well, at this particular point in time, providing information that's accurate and up to date is so important because, as we know, the landscape is changing so quickly. So we tend to get some of the most up-to-date information, and students can contact our office to find out what's happening with their courses, or if they're having difficulty with registration or having concerns about how to make that transition from working into working remotely, that we can provide some information and create those connection points. But we're also still doing what we sometimes refer to as developmental work, where we work really closely with students. And instead of simply providing all the answers, we help them unpack whatever is happening for them academically or personally. And those sessions are a lot longer, and we make time to help students work through those kinds of challenges. And then, there's other levels of engagement we offer that are more learning-centered, of stepping back, helping the students step back and understand where they fit in this big strategy called education. And once again, given the current climate and what we're hearing about shifts in educational strategies and delivery strategies, I think, if education and moving through a degree wasn't difficult enough with all these current challenges, that becomes even more enhanced and more stress-inducing for students. So it's a great place for students to work through the academic and personal complexities. We call this a holistic approach to academic advising, actually, because we're not only focused on what courses a student needs to take, but all the many things that may be impacting their ability to achieve those academic goals. Other things that we do, we have advisors who work very closely with the International Student and Study Abroad Center, and those students can work closely with international students, and they will know how to identify the academic strategies and the academic challenges, as well as some challenges that relate to study permits and immigration concerns. We also have academic coaches who work with the university transition students, and they can help first-year students in that program navigate all of these changes as well. And we also have advisors who provide culturally relevant advising for Indigenous students in the Trish Monture Center for Student Success. So there's so many access points for students to connect with us, and there's so many different levels that they can approach us on that it's a great opportunity for students to contact us, because it's not only about courses, but it is also about courses. It can be that basic, or it can be far more complex if they have concerns and questions.
And so you touched upon that sense of stress, uncertainty at the moment. And I know this time of year, a lot of students will be thinking about, finishing up final exams and their grades, thinking about their academic progress. So whether that's convocation or whether that's continuance into the next academic year. If students are concerned about their academic progress, how can your team support them?
We're seeing heightened distress in students, and some of the places we see those concerns are In our deferred exam accommodation, for example, we have a variety of accommodations that students can access if they experience extenuating circumstances. And the COVID-19 pandemic is clearly an extenuating circumstance. So in the deferred exam process, what we're seeing is that students who were unable to complete their exams for because of something that's occurred for them personally, or because of their inability to adapt to this shifting landscape, they can request to have their exams deferred, and they would write their exams in June as opposed to writing them right now in the current window. Other accommodations that exist are academic appeals. So if a student finds that this semester they have not succeeded and they really do contribute it to extenuating circumstances related to COVID-19, they may be eligible to submit an appeal for an academic appeal for retroactive withdrawals from some of their courses. Given that the university has also extended the course withdrawal deadline, that's a fabulous accommodation that the university has offered. And I think that's going to help students. We've certainly sensed a lot of relief for students with that particular accommodation. And it definitely goes in tandem with what we're doing in the college. Students may want to meet with an advisor to talk about retake strategies, course retake strategies. We can help a student navigate that and combine that with a plan of action for moving through this difficult time academically and making a plan for moving forward in order to continue with their studies, address any lingering or ongoing or lingering fears and concerns they have. These are all supports that we offer. It's part of what we do, and it's interesting that in this time that our roles as academic advisors are coming into the full fruition because of the many ways that we assist students.
So I know that we've been talking a little bit about the students who are completing their programs at the moment, but there's also a new term starting next week. Blair, maybe you could tell me a little about what spring and summer term looks like at the College of Arts and Science, and perhaps what kind of programs are being offered.
Yeah, sure, I can do that, Peter. Well, I think the big thing for students to know, the way that term 2 ended, which was remotely, is how spring and summer courses are going to be offered this summer on campus and in the College of Arts and Science. So what students are going to notice is that because of the amount of time it would take to come up with a virtual or a remote-based lab, many of the science classes are not being offered remotely. So things like Biology 120, Biology 121, introductory chemistry, just because there's a pretty heavy lab component to those courses, they're not being offered this spring and summer session. However, courses like introductory physics, they are being offered. The department has come up with a way to offer that lab remotely. And then what we're also seeing is many of the other programs in the college, so in the humanities and social sciences and some of the sciences are adding more courses to the docket. We're also seeing, because the courses are going to be offered remotely, popular courses, say like Psychology 120, where it might only have 40 seats in person in the spring and summer, they were able to expand enrollment in that course because of the remote type offerings. So the real important message for students is that there are spring and summer offerings for them to take, but they're going to be handled and be offered a little bit differently in that they're mostly going to be remotely, mostly going to be asynchronous if that's possible. And asynchronous, for those who don't know, it means that course can be offered at while it'll follow a schedule as far as assignments and course requirements, the material can be offered at times that are convenient for the student. So most of them, for the most part, we've heard that they're going to be offered asynchronously, but there are some that just because of the time that it would take to come up with that type of method, they're not able to offer them asynchronously. So I think what's important for students to know is when they're registering, the courses are showing that there are days and times for that course, but we've been telling students that are contacting the office to check in with the instructor, check in with the department, just to see how it's being offered. There might be an opportunity to take more courses than students might take, or to take 2 courses that show on the schedule being offered at the same time, but they're actually going to be asynchronous. And any of that guidance or feedback that students might need, they can give our office a call and we can help with that. But yeah, so just the big message for all of our students is that there are still offerings for them available.
And some of what we're hearing is that a lot of students are evaluating what their summer looks like, where they previously had plans to work and that might not be happening anymore. There's obviously some circumstances with families. So I know there's a lot of students weighing things up at the moment. And I appreciate your message that really they just need to pick up the phone or email and they can really just discuss what that could look like for them. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Renée?
Something that comes to mind is that when I talk to students about spring and summer session, the compressed spring and summer session can be challenging for students, but now they also have the added challenge of working remotely. So I recommend that students connect with an academic advisor to talk that through, because there are resources online for making the adjustment to studying remotely and learning remotely. But it's worth having a conversation about what a compressed course schedule looks like, because some students thrive in that environment. They can take in a lot of information in a short window of time, and they can move through it really quickly. Whereas other students, like myself, I would use myself as an example, I tend to require more time to process and to really take in information. So a compressed schedule for me, as one example, isn't as exciting for me as an open or a longer course. So it's something for students to think about and to really weigh out how they're progressing in a course, and if they feel like they cannot succeed in it, to not worry about withdrawing from that class. It's definitely an option. Now, I'm not trying to discourage students from registering at all. More so, I'm encouraging students to talk to an advisor about that double whammy of working in a compressed schedule and working remotely, to make sure they have the supports they need to navigate that tricky terrain.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we're all very different kind of learners, and I think we're learning much of that. But I'm sure that a lot of students would also feel maybe there's an opportunity to progress right now in ways that perhaps there otherwise wouldn't have been for them. Well, so one of the things that I'm asking all guests to share is one thing that they're doing under these strange circumstances to be well, whether that's something that brings them joy or a sense of connection. Blair, maybe I can ask you, what's one of those things for you, and how do you find that helps?
I think for me, it's really, now that I get to spend much more time with my kids, it's really being able to try and live during this time like they are. They're very obviously very stressed about it, but they deal with it differently. So, for example, going outside with them to jump on the trampoline, or to go rollerblading, or to just leave the day behind in whatever way I can. That's really carefree like a kid. And that's really what I've been focusing on during my workday. Making sure, though, because we're all spending so much time together in the same space, making sure, though, to take time that is just for me as well. So I try and carve out at least an hour a day that's just for me, and I make sure that everyone in my family also tries to do the same, so that I just have that time for me, that I'm not working on something, that I'm just with a book or playing a game or doing something that I can just focus on for myself. Once the pandemic hit and I was at home more, I started getting more into practicing yoga, and I haven't been doing that as often of late, but that I find that's really helpful, just to shut off my mind and just to think about myself and how to be well for me, if you will.
That's great. How about you, Renée?
I think the most important thing for me is knowing when to unplug and stay unplugged. Working remotely, studying remotely, it's an extremely concentrated way of interacting and communicating, and it can be really draining. So I would encourage students and staff and faculty to make a plan for when you're going to unplug and stick to it, and shut off all your notifications so that you have some downtime. Because I think the impulse is that we have to stay more connected all the time now because of how we're communicating, and it can be very draining. So give yourself permission to unplug. Let your friends and family know you're going to unplug and take some time for yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is there a final thought you'd want to leave listeners with?
Yeah, for me, it's to just to make sure they're taking care of themselves. And if they're an arts and science student, or even if they're not, just give us a call and know that we're here to support them and help guide them through this crazy time that we're in, we're here. We'll help them figure it out, or at least get started on the right path.
Thanks so much, guys, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah,
really
thanks.
appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity, Peter.
Thanks for listening to the Be Well at Usask podcast with me, Peter Headley, and thanks again to Blair and Renée for joining me and sharing. Students can connect with the Arts and Science Advising Team by phone or by email. The links are listed in the podcast details. Please check in again for further episodes and more content. Please subscribe and share this podcast. We're currently on YouTube and Spotify. We'd also love to hear from you. Please post comments and questions and we'll look to include them in future episodes. Also, if there's a person you'd like to see as a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Liv Markin and Jill McMillan, who are learning specialists at Student Learning Services. We're going to be talking about how students can succeed academically, especially during the transition to remote learning. So until next time, stay safe and be well.